Is Eric Bieniemy stealing the Chiefs coaching staff? And we're going to answer all your questions today on Twitter Thursday. Welcome to Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. It is Twitter Thursday. We're going to get to your questions coming up here in a bit. And there is some news that we're going to go over about the Chiefs coaching staff and a couple of bits and pieces about what is going to be available for you to see and understand. Coming up today, we're brought to you, this episode and all of us are brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the NFL and the NBA. That said, you can find out more and make every moment more at FanDuel.com/lockedon today. Go over there and check them out. It's not just like the thievery, right? It is the natural progression of a coaching staff. So we're going to talk about who might be leaving, who has an opportunity, and what you might see more of Patrick Mahomes, because I think the world is ready for more Patrick Mahomes. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, home of the Athletic Matrix, which will be out very soon once we get all the data in. So look for late March. You can pre-order today at rogueapc.com. Check that out, as well as NFL 33 and RGR football.
And I'm Chris Clark. Thank you all for listening. We do appreciate it. There is a lot to talk about when we start looking at the offseason for Kansas City. We've already kind of started a little bit, but we are getting some new nuggets and a little bit of interesting information that we are going to share with you today. So I'm looking forward to that. If you haven't already, please hit the like, subscribe, or notification bell on YouTube. And we do appreciate iTunes and Spotify reviews as well. So one of the things that came out was Greg Lewis is interviewing in Washington. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, I do as well. It's not a total surprise to me. I theorized with Matt the other day that I think he's a guy that is looking for a quarterback coach slot. He's coached running backs. He's coached wide receivers in Kansas City. In terms of the progression of an NFL coach, if you have aspirations of getting to a head coach, you got to get to OC. To get to OC, you got to get to quarterback coach. It's pretty much the progression. Are there guys who dip around that because they're so excellent at other positions? There are sometimes, but generally that's the way that it goes. And it feels to me that I thought he would be a candidate for this role this year as everybody moves up. At least that's the expectation, right? So if that's not the case, it tells me that that's probably what he's looking for, rather than standing pat. Do you agree with that?
I think that's what it has to be. That's the only thing that really makes sense when you start looking at the situation. I agree with you. I thought that they would have probably looked at him. Reed seems to like Greg Lewis, and I'm not saying anything against the guy. I'm just saying he seems to like him. He seems to be trying to groom him to be a guy that's going to take over and maybe become a head coach someday, at least an offensive coordinator. I think it looked like that's the progression that he was taking. So it made a lot of sense for him to go to running backs to, kind of get his hand in another room, and to go to QB makes a lot of sense too. And I agree with you. I thought that in Kansas City, he would have that opportunity. So I'm kind of surprised that they're interviewing him in Washington, because I'm curious to see what he's able to do there, or what he's going to do there if they hire him.
Yeah. The other thing that tells me is that he didn't have the opportunity here in Kansas City, which means one of two things. Either Joe Blamars is the guy they're looking at for that, or it's Girardi. Now, Girardi's not as experienced, but evidently he's a hot name. Matt mentioned him last week. I think it's intriguing because clearly Greg Lewis has a ton of experience, more so than the other two guys. But if you're in that situation, you're on the staff and you don't feel you can make the next step forward for whatever reason, that is the next logical progression, to go with the guy that you've just been with, that you know his philosophy, you know him personally, you work well together. I think at that point, if I'm him, I think I have to try to go improve myself in an offensive staff in Washington that is an open door right now. Sometimes they retain coaches from the previous staff. Sometimes they don't. So I think it's a good move for him. I think the Chiefs might have created themselves more of a gap than I expected to have this offseason in the staff.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that it's they're going to be looking for a new running backs coach, obviously, if he takes that position. So that'll be something to watch. But then you start looking at the thought of him going to be a QB coach over in Washington. I do agree. I think that's interesting. I understand why you'd want to go with Bieniemy, and I think it's also interesting that it looks like he wouldn't have that opportunity in Kansas City, because I would have thought that Andy Reid would have been, looking forward to him being that guy. But we'll have to see what happens with the Chiefs coaching staff. Still waiting to figure out who their offensive coordinator is going to be specifically, although we think we know. But there's obviously going to be a couple other changes.
Mm-hmm. more will come down the line. I try not to anticipate this because you never know what it's like in the rooms with the guys. They're doing player exit interviews. The coaches get exit interviews. They have wrap up meetings, and sometimes it just throws you for a loop as to what the movement becomes. I didn't really anticipate a lot going with Eric Bieniemy, but maybe that's the best case scenario for everyone. And then you get a little new blood in the Chiefs running back room, and I think hey, Jamal Charles, come on out.
Well, the other question I have is there going to be anybody else?
Yeah.
Greg Lewis is the first name. Is there going to be anybody else that maybe follows Bieniemy and takes a little bit of a promotion? Maybe one of those assistant coaches that are assistant line, assistant, whatever position you want to look at. I mean, you could look at it that way as well. So something to watch there. I think that's going to be intriguing to see.
I agree. And for all of you screaming at the camera right now, I know you want Alex Smith as a quarterback coach. I haven't seen any indication that he's changed his mind and wants to start coaching
or Chad Henne for that matter.
Right. Chad just got a break.
Well, and to be clear, the whole reason that those guys aren't going to want to do that is because you have long hours as a coach and probably pretty much like a player's hours, if not worse. So yeah. I can't say that it's surprising to me. Henne said he wants to go watch his kids grow up. Maybe he becomes a QB coach or something about where he wants to go live. I think it was in Pennsylvania I saw. So we'll see.
Yeah, you could definitely. There's a lot of options. And there's options to see more of what goes on behind the scenes. A couple of news bites about you're going to see more Frank Patrick Mahomes and what goes on in his life and has for this last season. We'll clue you in on that after this. Got to tell you about our friends from FanDuel because right now we're midway through the NBA season. The football season is over, I know, but March Madness is coming. NBA's in full swing. Hockey's going. You can check it all out. It's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now they're giving you a no-sweat first bet. You make a bet. It's $1,000 that you can win if your first bet doesn't, and then you can have those bonus bets locked into your account. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and really easy to use. And then you can bet everything you want, from three-pointers to points in the paint, the money line. You can put it all together in a same-game parlay and really ratchet up your winnings. It's really simple, and you don't want to miss this chance. The no-sweat first bet is you bet a bet. If it loses, you get $1,000 in bonus bets into your account when you sign up with our code at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. And that's going to be underneath Chris over there. It's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. And go learn some more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA and the NFL. So that said, I think the interesting thing that comes out, because I'm always looking to know a little bit more tidbits. Any behind the scenes footage that I can get, I can usually pick something up that most people aren't going to advertise. It doesn't come up in interviews. And, everybody wants to know about QB1. So how are we going to see him?
QB1 is going to have a docuseries on Netflix. It is going to be something that he is producing with Peyton Manning. And it's going to follow around him and Kirk Cousins and Marcus Mariota throughout the 2022 season. And it came out that they had the QBs mic'd up for every single game, which the NFL supposedly, I guess, didn't allow most seasons or at any point until this series was being done. So you will be able to see, it's going to be a docu-series, so there's going to be multiple episodes, and it's going to be following around Mahomes, Cousins, and Mariota. You'll possibly be able to see clips from when he's mic'd up in every single game. You're going to get more behind-the-scenes information, and I do think it's also interesting that he's helping produce this, just kind of expanding his reach and what he is doing league-wide.
Good for him. And you might even get a taste of Desmond Ridder in there somewhere if they're following around Mariota, because I think that's the guy that's going to be a lot in the headlines this offseason as we kind of plan around what the Atlanta Falcons need to do with their quarterback spot. And is it Des Ridder? Well, you guys know how I feel about that. We'll see what happens. But there are bigger questions, and we have some for Chiefs Kingdom, so let's get into them. Twitter Thursday, you can send it over to us at Locked On Chiefs on Twitter. You can send it to Chiefs Corner. That's Chris's account. You can always send it to mine, Locked On, Ryan Tracy NFL. You never know when I'm going to see those, so let's use the Locked On one. I think that's best. Chris, do you have a favorite of the responses that we got?
I do have a couple of favorites, and I'll get into those in just a second. I do want to do a quick salary cap update. One of the reasons they're at negative $3.5 million is because they added all the features contracts that they have so far. There were going to be more. It's top 51 that hits the salary cap. Kansas City is going to have to make some moves before 315 to get under the salary cap. We will keep you posted on what those moves are going to be or when they're made. I'm just going to start at the beginning. And because I think this is one of the questions that a lot of people are going to be asking, and it kind of hits a lot of different questions. Would the Chiefs look at Taylor Lewan at tackle, right or left? And it was announced that he was released from the Tennessee Titans. He played 2 games last year. It sounds like he could possibly retire. So I'm going to go no. I don't think that they're going to be looking at him at all unless it's a vet min deal, and I really don't see him wanting to do that.
Yeah, the real question is Taylor have a capable lower body, right or left? I'm not sure the answer is yes for either.
It's knees, right?
That's the problem. Now that said, what was it? 5 games in 20, right?
Yeah, I believe 5 games in 20 and something like 15 or 16 in 2021, and then 2 games last year. So hard to see that anybody's really going to give him a chance without doing like a vet min highly incentivized deal. I just don't see Kansas City going that path.
You're pushing just to get the 50% mark there with that many misses in 48 games. 49 games with 17 this year. So 1 extra missed. Now, that said, I love the concept. He was a very good player at his height.
Yep.
Obviously a first rounder. For a long time, he held the number 1 tackle spot in the athletic matrix. I started that back in 2011, so I have classes all the way back. He was class of 2014, but he held that title for a very long time. And so the deterioration of his lower body, both knees, I believe, and I think there's been an ankle in there too. Like there's enough. This is what happens when you're a 11-year veteran? No,
yep,
9-year,
something like that.
So it is sad to see. If he were miraculously healed and missing all this time this year had rejuvenated him, I would say, hey, give him a workout. Let's see what he's got. I mean, I would say the same thing about Eric Fisher that I know a lot of Chiefs Kingdom would want as well. But at some point, time catches up with you in this sport. It does not matter who you are, and I think that may be the case for Taylor Lewan.
Agreed. I'm going to go to my actual favorite question because I am not so sure we're going to agree on this one. Assuming KC lets Juju walk and Higgins and Cincinnati can't agree on an extension, do you humor the idea of floating Cincy a 2024 first-round pick for Higgins this offseason?
No.
And that's assuming Cincinnati would even trade him to Kansas City.
Nope, not doing it. Not making them stronger in any way, shape, or form. But
I completely disagree.
I'll give you 2.
I would give him a first in 2024, not even 2023. In 2024, I would give him a first for Higgins as long as you can make an extension. He's a legit number 1 wide receiver that's young enough to be in Kansas City for a very long time. If they could sign him to an extension, I would do it.
True. I can't make them stronger, though. I have to think strategically here. I could give him a 2. I could give him a 2 and a 3 the next year.
I think that makes Kansas City stronger than it makes Cincinnati.
I'm not so sure because he's going to leave there the next year. If they can't get a contract done next year, he will be a free agent. I'd rather wait a season and go get him as a free agent and spend the money that hopefully we've recouped by then with the restructures and things that are coming in the up in the cap, right? I'd rather do it that way and let him hit the open market. It will be huge, but if you really feel you want him like that, I would do that because you're talking about spending the money anyway, because like you said, you have to have a contract offer in place pretty much. And I just can't give the Bengals a first-round pick. I just can't do it. I'm surprised you can
do it.
No.
I can't because he's 24 right now. To me,
think about it too.
It's complete. I understand what you're saying about giving up a first-round pick and you don't want to make them stronger. But this makes Kansas City stronger for a very long time. It gives them a legitimate number 1 wide receiver that they can build around and they can have with Patrick for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they're going to have to pay him what they were going to have to pay Tyreek Hill. And I will say this, and I know we've talked about this on the show before, but I don't think Tyreek Hill would have had an issue getting his contract if he was 24 or 25 as opposed to being his age currently.
That's a fair point. Yeah, just can't do it. Bottom line, Higgins is worth it. I do agree, especially when we're talking about two teams whose picks are going to be, 28 or higher, likely for the next few years. I just can't do it because 2 1s in the first round can get you into the top 10. And I can't let them do that because it is so tight. I know the Chiefs finally got off the schneid. They're still only 1 of 4 against this team. I cannot make them stronger.
But they're 1 of 3. Well, yeah. They won 1 of 4 of the games. So I can see what you're saying there. The other argument that I would make in this regard is that it would probably lead to Kansas City being in the Super Bowl again in 2023 because he would be here for the entire season. And they're going to have to pay Joe Burrow this offseason, and more than likely they're not going to be able to do what they've been doing with their team over the next couple of years, and they will not be able to compete like they have been because right now they do have 2 number ones.
Yeah.
They're going to have to pay Jamar Chase, and they're going to have to pay Jamar Chase $30 million more than likely when he becomes a free agent, or not even a free agent, but when he can get a contract next year. So I don't know. I knew that you and I would disagree on this one, but I like the question. So
yeah,
there you go.
It's a great question. And thank you for whoever sent it in. Again, I would give you 2 2s in back-to-back years. I ain't giving you 1.
Instead of a 1, you'd give up 2 2s.
Yeah. No, I'm stingy. I'd give you a 2 and a 3. But there are more scenarios and more questions out there. So why don't we hit that on the backside of this message from our pals? Okay, all kidding aside, let's get down to reality so that I don't look like a fool and, get off my lawn, granddad.
One of the last remaining units on the team that hasn't received a complete overhaul is the defensive line. If each chose to do a makeover of the D line this offseason, what would your approach be to free agency and the draft? First, to me, is re-sign Chris Jones to an extension.
Yeah, I mean that's got to
be, and
then
then figure it out from there. And then the second move is probably if you can get Frank Clark to do a highly incentivized deal, get his cap number down to $2 or $3 million for this season, and give him incentives like 6 sacks because he only got 5 last year during the regular season. If he hits 6 sacks, he gets a $5 million bonus or whatever you want to do for that. I think that's the type of deal you can keep Frank Clark on. And then you got to start figuring out what you're going to do at other positions. You're going to have free agency you're going to have to deal with, and you're going to have to restock that defensive line. I'm not sure that that's the direction they're going to go this offseason, but that's something that is going to be coming.
It could be, and there are a number of ways that they can do that. Chris Jones is I completely agree, is the first domino to fall. It has to be because you're going to make space on your cap for these guys with that move.
Yep.
Second one for me is bring back Colin Saunders. Get the 2 guys that you think can be part of that rotation going forward. I like Colin Saunders. I think that he's shown in a contract year he's come on. I would, again, give him some incentives as well. But I think it has to be like the next big piece has to be in the draft, because I look at the free agent class here, and I have it up here in front of me. Yannick Ngakoue is currently on a 13-year deal. He's unfettered and will be available. I don't know that he can command a whole lot more than that. Could he get up to 15? Possibly. In this system, is he worth it? I think that's a really intriguing thing to look at, because I think it's a little bit more get off than Spags usually gets. Not quite as much the power, but we've seen how, Carlos and Frank got lighter this year, and that was what turned the tide in a number of situations. So maybe they're coming around on that. Look at the rest of the field. A lot of guys are aging out. Larry Ogunjobi, I would have liked 2-3 seasons ago. I don't know that I can go there now.
I
Cleveland
think
Farrell,
you have to build to the draft otherwise. I don't think you can go sign a guy. And one thing I want to throw out really quick, I don't mind bringing back Saunders, but Wharton is a restricted free agent. So I think you bring him back as well. I think he played well enough for Kansas City. He got injured this year, and I think he'll be fine for the start of the season. So I think he could be a guy on the interior that could help. But I think you're going to have to do it in the draft. I think you're probably going to have to trade up if you're going to go try to get another D end to bookend with Karlaftis. And I think that wouldn't be a bad move.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have no problem with them going and trying to get a bookend that is a speed guy for on the opposite side of Karlaftis. I think if you keep Frank Clark, you're going to be in a great position. Maybe you bring back Dunlap as well. Maybe you can give them those type of contracts that they want to play here.
You're preaching to the choir about a speed rusher. I just don't see it in Spags' future. I think Spags is going to like guys like Tyree Wilson, who I'm not so sure is going to go in the top 10 like people are saying. I'm just not convinced of that because there is a lot of upside in him, but there's work to do too. But he's going to dig guys like White from Georgia Tech. He's going to dig Lucas Van Ness, like the power dudes that can play edge if you have to, but they can play 5, they can play 4, they can play 3, and then you can move them all over the place. Like basically a bigger, stronger version of Mike Dan, I think, is somebody that they're going to be looking for. And you got to supplement that with a little experience as well. There's one guy out there that I want your opinion on. Because he's a Veach kind of guy, he was overdrafted, did not progress well enough, and they voided the last year of Marcus Davenport's contract. He's the kind of pick a failed first rounder off the pile guy that Veach loves.
Yeah, and if he's willing to come in for a cheap contract because he wants to play for a championship, I'm all for it. I don't think you can go out and give him $10 million a year.
Agreed.
On all 1-year deal. I think if he wants to come in and play for 2 or 3, then I think that's a move that you can do, and I think that you can feel great about it. And I want to be clear, maybe it's not going to be a speed guy, but you need to have somebody that can produce bend around the edge because they don't really have that in Karlaftis right now, and I think that's going to be important to have as a bookend for Karlaftis. Yeah.
Well, the nice thing about Wilson too is that he does have bend. That is there. It doesn't use it all the time. It's really from the film work that I've done, it's really his first step that I want to see more development of. He's not quick twitchy in the first couple of steps, but if you let him get to the tackle shoulder, when he turns the corner, he's got those long limbs, long strides that he really accelerates after the quarterback. It's kind of a 2-phase attack for him, and he's exactly the kind of guy that reminds me of the long-limbed, strong guys with big strides that Spags love back in New York, and I can see them really drifting that way. And if there's somebody they're going to trade up for, that might be the guy.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that they could be looking at. And I want to also be clear on this. I know this wasn't part of the question, but I think that there's still another position on the offense at wide receiver that they're still having to rebuild. I don't think, yes, it worked last year, but they're not where they need to be. And I think that that's going to be something that they're going to be looking at rebuilding in the next couple of seasons, if not this offseason. We kind of already talked about this, but I'll just throw it out there. With Lewan getting cut today, if Orlando wants too much money, could Lewan be a decent fit on a prove-it deal? I'm going to say no, just because I don't think that he's going to be able to be a guy that you can rely on.
I will say this. There's less risk in Taylor Lewan than there was in Kyle Long. So if it can be a vet minimum, if it can be, hey, I don't need to play part-time, be a backup kind of thing. I can be the vet that comes in as the 6th or whatever. He's willing to do that.
It can be a swing. Yeah.
Right. I could see doing that because you're right. The risk is there that he's just not able to play anymore. And maybe having that time off would help.
But the question was if Orlando wants too much money. So I think that would mean that Orlando isn't here. I don't think you can have Lewan be your starter.
Yeah. Agreed. And by the way, Orlando wants too much money.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they all do. To be fair, I mean, if you're trying to get paid, you try to get paid, and I understand that. So it is what it is. So the Titans need a left tackle. Brown in the 31st pick for pick 11. Brown's a free agent, but they are going to probably tag him. So that is a possibility that they could do something like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to say no. I think 31 is too high if you're giving him Brown too.
You cannot trade him until he signs the tag. That's going to be the sticking issue. I don't think
if they're willing to give him, if they're willing to pay him, he would sign the tag. But it would have to be something that would be done before the trade was able to be consummated. So that's going to have to be, something that they're going to have to work through over the next couple of months before the draft.
Right. Well, that's the scary part though, because I don't know that he's even going to admit that.
Yeah.
Until you're too far down the line. You know what I mean? But
right.
Just in terms of value, 31 and Orlando Brown for 11. The only reason I'll disagree with you, in this class, 11 gets you your choice of tackle. There's not a top 10 offensive tackle in this class. So I think at 11, you would be able to choose the guy you want no matter what. And maybe that's attractive enough.
Okay. Think we can swing Joe Tooney to left tackle and elevate one of our backups, Kennard Caliendo Allegretti, if re-signed to guard. It would be a cost-saving move, and Tooney can play anywhere. I say no because, to me, you don't weaken the interior of that offensive line, and Tooney is a probably top 3 guard, and he wouldn't be a top 5 left tackle and probably not a top 10 left tackle. He'd be serviceable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's worth it, though.
It's like purposely taking the Ferrari out, taking the big old tile with the nice red brake calipers on there, right there, and throwing a donut on it. That's what it is. You're hurting yourself at 2 positions on one side of the line.
Right, and then they bring it back and they ask the same question, or right tackle if we tag OBJ. And I don't think that you definitely wouldn't do it for right tackle because that's not positional value isn't there.
Yeah. And honestly, like there's something to be said for having the elite interior 3 as a 3. Like I wouldn't break them up. Like if they have trouble replacing a right tackle, I wouldn't move Trey Smith out to tackle either. Those 3 as a 3, I think are unstoppable.
Yep. Agreed. Where would you feel comfortable taking a safety in the draft and who?
I would take a safety. I would trade up into the low 20s like they did last year to take Brian Branch. Brian Branch can be a nickel safety, do it all. That can unlock L'Jarius Sneed, let him lock down half of the field for this team. I think
so. Even though you have Cook, you would do that. Okay.
I would, because you could play Branch really as the third nickel. And I know everyone's going to scream at me. Well, what about Josh Williams and Jalen Watson? You now have the best 5 corners in football if you did that. And they're all 26 or younger.
Okay. We get to pick 31 and 5 wide receivers, 5 edges, 3 defensive tackles, and 3 offensive tackles are gone. But no tight ends have been taken yet.
Hold on. Do the math for me again.
5 wideouts, 5 edges, 3 DTs, and 3 offensive tackles. That's 16.
Okay.
So obviously there's going to be players at other positions, probably 5 quarterbacks, but that's not going to affect Kansas City. Do the Chiefs take the top tight end at 31?
It's very difficult to say that because of what they like. I think the top tight end in terms of being ready to play NFL football is Mayer from Notre Dame, but he is an inline Y. He is not the Chiefs type. The next guy I think is Dalton Kincaid. He's the next guy on my board right now. Very rudimentary board so far, folks. But he's right there at barely a first-round grade. So, like, the timing might be right. But you need wide receiver, too. I mean, like you said, you need D-line. You could take interior D-line. I just have trouble with Travis Kelce still on the roster. Now, if Travis retired tomorrow, this would change everything. But with him still on the roster, a first-round tight end is a luxury to me. I think you have to rebuild the shorter areas on this roster first.
And I don't disagree with that, but I would say with this one caveat, I think you still have to try to take the best player available as long as he fits your system. And if he is the best player available, I'm okay with that. It does feel like a luxury. I agree with that. But if you don't have any DTs that you feel are worth that pick, or any kind of DNs or tackles or wide receivers, I would be okay with it, because Travis has probably got 3 years left at most. I hate saying that, but
I don't know. I could see him going longer than that, tell you the truth.
Huh?
But you hit it on the head. If there's not a wide receiver, if there's not a defensive interior guy or a tweener even that's higher on their board than that tight end, then you have to, or you got to trade out of that pick.
Yep. Agreed. This is probably my favorite question. It just came in a couple minutes ago. What is the weakness Mahomes pinpoints this offseason to work on?
That is a very, very good question. I will say this. He's done very good at adjusting to what they give him. I think what he has to do next really is concentrate on moving guys more. He's good with his eyes, but you see so many teams that set up to play him, in particularly the wide receiver group, in a specific way. I think he's kind of become immune to that So he's going to make the short throws. He's come around to not waiting and drifting out of the pocket so much, right? I think the next thing is that he has to be more manipulative with his body movements, not by breaking the pocket, by turning his shoulders, by turning his eyes, and moving safeties around. I think that's something that's worth doing. I don't know if it will be what he does.
All I can tell you is I don't have a great answer for this one. I love the question. He is, in my mind, he has so few weaknesses. It'd be really hard for me to figure out which one that he would want to go attack. But you do know that every single season he has been attacking a weakness. So what is it going to be this year? I don't know. I agree with you. I think manipulation with your body would be something that would be great to be able to do. Because he's going to have the rest of what he's able to do right now, and it's going to be better next year. So it's a great question. He's worked on his footwork. He's gotten a lot better with his footwork. He's gotten a lot better at staying in the pocket. And what I mean by that is not just the ability not to run. It's the ability to not override your tackles and go too deep.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge deal because that was something that he struggled with last year. And I mean, 21 more than 22.
1B for me would be to just hand the ball off more. I think they saw, and you guys are going to love it.
That's not on Mahomes.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes those RPOs are his choices.
Well, okay. That's true. That's true. RPOs, yes, but they got to call more of the RPOs and they got to call more running plays in order for that to happen. And I don't know that that's going to be the case. I'm really curious to see what he's able to do this offseason with Sky Moore, if MBS is still here, whoever they bring in at wide receiver, because they're going to bring in somebody, and what they're able to do. I mean, you have a lot of guys that are going to be free agents. McCole Hardman is not likely back. He just had surgery. Sounds like it went well. But more than likely, he's probably gone. So you're looking for another guy that can stretch the field, and you got to find somebody that you can go get chemistry with. I expect that he'll be bringing people out to Texas again to work this offseason.
I agree. And Matt had a good point. McColl's window might have gone out the proverbial window now because of his recovery time and the timing against free agency. McColl might not have a giant market because of a significant surgical repair. So maybe he can make it back.
Yeah, possible. It'll be interesting to see what they're able to do. I do think Kansas City is extremely lucky to have Mahomes. And I know we've said that over and over and over again, but one of the reasons I'm saying that right now is because he just won the Super Bowl. And quite literally less than 2 weeks after he's won the Super Bowl, he's back in Fort Worth working with Bobby Stroop on training and getting ready for next year.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you do. That's the NFL year. You guys are going to hear something special. I got a chance to talk to Mike Burton tonight, so we're going to have a conversation. And I'm sure he'll have something to say about it as well. So you'll hear some pieces of that next week on all the platforms, especially here. So thanks for tuning in with us. Thanks for your Twitter questions. I appreciate that. Sorry we were a little long-winded, went a little over today, but we'll get back to you. We have some great stuff coming up for you as we get ready for not only free agency. Combine is right around the corner. There's going to be a ton of prospective Chiefs out there that we're going to see in the next week. So if you would, like, sub, and hit the bell. Make sure you check out the audio platforms as well. Check out the Locked On NFL feed for all of your league-wide information. And we'll be back with you tomorrow for something fun. Thanks for listening today, and we'll talk to you then.